Today we're diving deep into Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Oh, yeah.
It's a text that's been influencing military minds and leaders, gosh, for centuries, right? To
Absolutely.
make things even more interesting, we're not just looking at the text itself. We're also exploring Lionel Giles's 1910 translation
Okay.
and his introduction, which provides some really valuable historical context.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about the Art of War, wouldn't you say, is how it's just as relevant today as it was centuries ago.
Absolutely. That's what's so amazing about it.
We can use it to understand not only military strategy, but also like business negotiations, even personal relationships.
All sorts of things. It's
Okay.
really,
It's like a timeless guide to strategic thinking, right?
it really is. It's a guide to thinking strategically. Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got this ancient text, this 1910 translation, and this goal to understand how it all applies to our lives today.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a plan, right?
Yeah.
But before we get into the actual strategies, let's talk about the big question mark surrounding Sun Tzu himself.
Yeah.
Did this brilliant military strategist even exist? Like, was he a real person?
That is the big question, right?
It is.
It's the question that scholars have been debating, for centuries.
Really?
Yeah. We have Sima Qian. He was the grand historian of China.
I've heard of him.
He places Sun Tzu around 500 BC and credits him with writing The Art of War.
So he's like, yep, Sun Tzu was real, and he was a genius.
Exactly. He even includes accounts of battles where Sun Tzu supposedly advised on strategy.
Oh, wow. So we've got a pretty credible source saying Sun Tzu was the real deal.
Yeah.
But is that the whole story?
Well, not exactly.
Okay, what else is there?
There's this other text, the Sun Tzu.
Okay.
It's a historical record from around the same time that Sun Tzu supposedly lived. And get this, it makes absolutely no mention of him.
Oh, wow. So it's like writing a history of, I don't know, rock and roll and leaving out Elvis.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It's a pretty big omission.
It is.
How could a figure like Sun Tzu, who's supposed to have been this master strategist, just disappear from the historical record?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher. It's a puzzle, right?
It is.
Scholars have been debating it for centuries.
Really?
Some, like Ye Shuixin, they look at the Sun Tzu's silence and say, see, Sun Tzu probably wasn't a real person.
He never existed.
They argue that if he was as influential as Sima Qian claims, he would have definitely shown up in other contemporary records.
Yeah, you'd think so, right? It's like he's either super famous or he doesn't exist at all.
That's basically the debate.
That's a pretty big gap.
It is. But then on the other side, we have Lionel Giles,
Okay.
our translator.
Right.
And he presents a strong argument for Sun Tzu actually existing.
Oh, interesting. Okay, what does he say?
He points to the internal evidence, the stuff within the Art of War itself.
Ah, so he's looking at the text.
Yeah. The text is just chock full of, really detailed descriptions, military tactics, battlefield psychology, a deep understanding of warfare.
Yeah.
Giles is basically saying, look, this text is way too smart, too insightful to have just been made up.
Somebody with real experience had to write this.
Exactly.
So Giles' team, Sun Tzu, was real.
He is. And to make things even more mysterious, there's this whole question of the original length of the Art of War.
Really?
The version we have today is 13 chapters.
Okay, yeah.
But the Han Shu, this historical record from the Han Dynasty, lists Sun Tzu's works as being 82 chapters long.
82 chapters. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's like a whole library on military strategy.
It really is.
What happened to the other 69 chapters?
That is a mystery lost to time, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some scholars think the 13 chapters we have are just a fragment of Sun Tzu's original work.
No, okay.
Others think it might be a compilation of his writings, maybe even with stuff added later by other strategists.
So it's like we have this amazing puzzle, but we're missing a ton of pieces.
Exactly.
We might never know the full story of Sun Tzu, but that just makes it even more intriguing, right?
It absolutely does.
It adds to the mystery.
But even with just the 13 chapters we have, there's so much wisdom to explore. Giles starts us off by diving into Chapter 1, Laying Plans.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of Sun Tzu's strategy. What's in Chapter 1 that's so important?
Chapter 1 is like the foundation for Sun Tzu's whole approach to warfare. It lays out 5 fundamental factors that any leader, military or otherwise, has to consider when they're sizing up a situation.
5 factors. Okay, that's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
What are they?
Okay, so there's the moral law,
Okay.
heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline.
5 factors. Got it. Break it down for us. What does each of these actually mean?
Right, so Sun Tzu starts with the moral law.
Okay.
This is basically about the harmony between a ruler and the people they rule.
So it's about everyone being on the same page.
It is. It's about having a shared purpose, a sense of unity.
Okay, that makes sense. You can't lead if no one's following you.
Exactly. Then you have heaven, which includes things like weather and timing. It's about understanding those natural forces at play, knowing when to strike, when to hold back.
So like a farmer, right?
Mhm.
Knowing when to plant your crops, when to harvest them.
Precisely, working with nature, not against it.
And then there's Earth, which is all about the terrain, the distances, and the strategic pluses and minuses of a battlefield.
Yeah, it's about knowing the lay of the land, using it to your advantage.
Like playing chess, right?
Right.
Understanding the board and knowing where to put your pieces. You don't want your queen stuck in a corner.
Exactly. And then there's the commander, which focuses on the qualities of a good leader: wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
All those great leadership qualities.
Sun Tzu believed a leader had to embody these things to inspire and motivate their followers.
So it's not just about barking orders.
Not at all.
It's about leading by example, inspiring trust.
Exactly. And finally, we have method and discipline.
Okay.
That's about the practical stuff: organization, logistics, supply chains, controlling expenses.
Right, the nitty-gritty.
Even the most brilliant strategy can fall apart if you don't have the resources and organization to back it up.
It's like having a great idea for a business but no money or team to make it happen. The idea is worthless without execution.
Totally.
So chapter 1's like Sun Tzu saying, here's the big picture. Consider all of this before you even think about going to war.
That's a great way to put it. He's laying the groundwork for a holistic approach to strategy.
Yeah.
One that considers not just military stuff, but also the moral, the environmental, the logistical, the leadership dimensions.
It's a pretty comprehensive framework.
It is.
But chapter 1 isn't all just about these big picture concepts, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier about deception being a key principle.
That's right.
Could you tell me more about that?
Sun Tzu famously says, all warfare is based on deception. And that idea, it's woven throughout the entire text. He talks about making yourself look weak when you're strong, feigning inactivity when you're ready to pounce, always keeping your enemy guessing.
So it's like playing poker. Bluffing your opponent into making bad decisions? You don't want to show your hand too early.
Exactly. He gives us some really concrete examples. He says, hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near.
Whoa, that's sneaky.
It is.
It's a mental game,
Absolutely.
like smoke and mirrors.
Sun Tzu really understood that warfare isn't just a physical contest, but a psychological one as well.
Right.
A skilled strategist can use deception to manipulate their enemy's thoughts and emotions and actions.
This is starting to sound like a spy movie.
It kind of is, right?
But before we get too carried away with the intrigue of deception, let's take a step back. How do these principles apply to everyday life? I mean, most of us aren't planning on leading armies into battle.
True. But the amazing thing about Sun Tzu's wisdom is that it goes beyond the battlefield. These principles can apply to, like, negotiating a business deal or even just navigating a tricky social situation.
Okay, give me an example. How could we use the idea of deception, say, in a business negotiation?
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting we start lying to our clients.
No. Deception in this context is more about being strategic with what you reveal. It's about highlighting your strengths, downplaying your weaknesses,
Right.
Creating a sense of urgency, but without coming across as desperate.
Okay.
It's about really understanding your opponent's motivations
Right.
and then using that to your advantage.
So it's about being smart, being prepared,
Yeah.
and really using your words carefully to get what you want.
It's like playing chess.
Exactly. Every move is calculated.
Absolutely.
You're always thinking a few steps ahead.
And just like in chess, knowing your opponent is key. Sun Tzu stresses that over and over again.
Oh, yeah. What does he say?
He says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Then he goes on to say, if you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle.
Wow. That's powerful. It's basically saying that knowledge is power. The more you understand yourself and your opponent, the better your decisions will be.
Right, and that knowledge, it goes beyond just facts and figures.
Okay.
It's about understanding their motivations,
Their fears.
their aspirations, really getting inside their head.
Anticipating their moves.
Exactly.
Okay, now it's really sounding like we're training to be Jedi Masters.
It kind of is like that.
But I get it. It's about being observant, paying attention to the details,
Yes.
and using that information to your advantage.
And Sun Tzu gives us a framework for gathering that intel, a system of, espionage, she calls it, the use of spies.
Okay, now we're getting into the cloak and daggers
Yeah, I
thing.
know, right?
But I thought we were talking about applying these principles to everyday life. Most of us don't have a network of spies.
That's true, but the principle of using spies, we can translate that into something we can all do, gathering information, doing our research.
So instead of sending secret agents into enemy territory, we're talking about reading industry reports, attending conferences,
Yeah.
talking to experts,
Exactly, being proactive, seeking out information.
not assuming we know everything.
Right.
So it's about being curious, asking questions,
Mm.
always being willing to learn.
Absolutely.
That's something we can all do, no matter what our job is or what we're trying to achieve.
It all comes back to one of Sun Tzu's most important messages. Continuous learning, self-improvement.
So it's not about reading The Art of War once and thinking, okay, I've got this strategy thing down.
Not at all.
It's about making it a lifelong pursuit,
Yeah.
constantly refining your skills,
Yeah.
adapting to new situations,
Yeah.
always trying to be a step ahead.
Exactly. And that's a journey we can all be on, no matter where we are in life.
Well, this is inspiring. It's amazing how a text written centuries ago can still have so much wisdom to offer. And we've only just scratched the surface of The Art of War, right?
We have. There's so much more to explore.
I'm looking forward to it. But for now, let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment to continue our deep dive. Okay, we're back, ready to continue our deep dive into Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Let's do it.
Before the break, we were talking about the importance of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And deception and strategy.
Uh-huh.
But Sun Tzu wasn't just about, outsmarting your opponent.
Right.
He also knew the importance of timing,
Absolutely.
momentum,
Yeah.
choosing your battles.
It's all connected.
In Chapter 3, Waging War, Sun Tzu warns against those long, drawn-out conflicts. What does he say?
He says, though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays.
So it's not about fighting every battle.
Right.
It's about picking the battles that matter.
Exactly. The ones that are going to give you a real strategic advantage.
Okay, so you've chosen your battle. Now what?
Then, when you do decide to engage, Sun Tzu really emphasizes striking quickly and decisively.
Okay.
He compares military tactics to water.
Oh, interesting.
He says, military tactics are like unto water, for water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak.
So it's about being adaptable,
Yes.
finding the path of least resistance, like water flowing downhill.
Exactly.
It makes me think of a river carving its way through a mountain,
I like that.
always finding the easiest route.
He also says, water shapes its course according to the nature of the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe whom he is facing. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions.
So there's no one-size-fits-all strategy.
Nope. You've got to be constantly adapting, reading the situation.
Adjusting your tactics.
Exactly.
It reminds me of a jazz musician.
Oh, yeah.
Improvising, riffing off the other players, creating something new in the moment.
That's a great analogy. It really captures that creative spark that's so essential for a master strategist.
And this adaptability, it's closely linked to deception, isn't it?
It is.
Which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, deception is key.
It seems to be a recurring theme for Sun Tzu.
It's fundamental to his whole philosophy. In Chapter 5, he writes, the skillful leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field.
Wait, so he's saying you can win a war without actually fighting?
He is. It's about using deception, intelligence, psychological warfare,
Okay.
to break the enemy's will before the fighting even starts.
Oh, wow.
He talks about creating these false appearances,
Okay.
spreading rumors,
Right.
using spies to infiltrate the enemy and sow chaos.
It's like some high-stakes espionage, mental manipulation.
It really is, and it requires such a deep understanding of human nature.
You've got to be able to read your opponent.
Anticipate their reactions.
Do you have a good example of this kind of psychological warfare in action, like a real historical example?
Oh, absolutely. There's a famous story about Sun Tzu. He was a descendant of Sun Tzu,
Okay.
and he used deception to win a battle against a much larger force.
Oh, I'd love to hear this.
So Sun Tzu's army was from the Qi state, and they had this reputation, at least among their enemies, for being kind of cowardly.
Really?
Sun Tzu decided to use that to his advantage. When his army crossed into enemy territory on the first night, He ordered them to light like 100,000 campfires.
Whoa, a lot of fire.
The next night, they lit only 50,000.
Half as many. Okay.
And then on the third night, only 20,000.
Oh, wow. So he was deliberately making his army look smaller.
Exactly. He was playing right into the enemy's expectations.
Very clever.
The enemy general saw the number of fires dwindling and figured the Qi army was deserting in droves,
I see.
got overconfident, and charged right into a trap that Sun Tzu had set.
He fell for it.
He did. It's a classic example of how you can use deception and a solid understanding of your opponent's psychology to turn the tables, even when you're facing a superior force.
Talk about turning your enemy's arrogance against them.
It's a classic move. It just shows you that knowledge is power.
Knowing their weaknesses.
Their biases, their assumptions.
That could be just as valuable as having more soldiers or better weapons.
Absolutely. And we talked earlier about how Sun Tzu has this whole framework for acquiring this knowledge.
The use of spies.
Right.
He took espionage very seriously.
He did. We talked about how using spies translates into doing research, due diligence in a modern context.
Yeah.
But Sun Tzu took the whole spy thing to another level, didn't he?
He did. He believed spies were absolutely essential in war. He said a wise ruler uses the highest intelligence of the army for purposes of spying.
Wow.
He even outlined 5 different types of spies.
5. Okay, let's hear it.
Local spies.
Okay.
Inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies.
5 types of spies, each with their own specific purpose.
Okay, break it down for me. What are the differences between them?
So local spies are recruited from, like, the local population in enemy territory. They're your eyes and ears on the ground.
Give you that insider perspective.
Exactly. They tell you about the terrain, what the people are feeling, what the enemy is doing in that area.
Got it. What about inward spies?
Inward spies are officials, maybe individuals within the enemy's government or their military.
Ooh, like moles. Working from within to sabotage. Sounds like a spy thriller.
It does, right? They can give you intel on the enemy's plans, internal conflicts, weaknesses.
Very valuable. Okay, what about converted spies?
Converted spies are actually enemy spies that you've captured.
Oh, wow.
And then, convinced to switch sides.
Double agents, now we're talking. That's
Yeah.
some serious spycraft.
Sun Tzu thought these guys were especially useful because they already have access to sensitive information.
Right.
And they can spread disinformation.
It's like turning their own weapons against them.
Exactly.
Okay, what's next? Doomed spies.
Doomed spies, those are the ones you send with false information.
So you're setting them up to be captured.
You are, to mislead the enemy with fake intel.
That's pretty risky.
It is. High risk, high reward.
Okay, and finally, surviving spies.
Surviving spies are your basic spies.
Okay.
They sneak into the enemy camp, observe, bring back info.
The classic spies we see in the movie.
Exactly. The ones dodging traps and escaping with vital intel.
So exciting.
I know, right? Sun Tzu really stressed treating all these spies well.
Of course, they're valuable assets.
Reward them, protect their identities,
Yeah.
keep everything top secret.
It makes sense. Without good spies, you're fighting blind.
Exactly. You need them to know what the enemy is up to. And he gives all these historical examples of how spies were used, to great effect in ancient China. He even suggests that, empires could rise and fall based on how good their spy networks were.
That makes you wonder about the spy networks that are operating today, doesn't it?
It does. It shows that intelligence gathering, deception, psychological warfare, it's all just as relevant now as it was back then.
The tools might have changed, but the principles are still there.
They are. And speaking of those timeless principles, one that really stands out to me, especially for applying these ideas to modern life, is Sun Tzu's focus on planning and preparation.
Being proactive, not just reactive.
Exactly. Sun Tzu was all about doing your homework. He says it's essential to understand the terrain, the weather, the enemy's likely movements, all that, before you even think about engaging.
So, just like studying for a test or prepping for a big presentation, the more you prepare, the better you'll do.
Right. It's about having a game plan, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, anticipating what your opponent might do.
Be ready for anything.
He even lays out these detailed classifications of different types of terrain.
Oh, really?
Each with its own unique advantages and disadvantages.
So, like a geography lesson for generals.
It is, and it really shows how a skilled strategist needs to be able to read the landscape, understand what it means strategically, adapt their tactics to fit.
So it's not just about the physical landscape, it's also about the psychological landscape.
Yes.
The mood of your troops, the mood of the enemy.
Sun Tzu says, a soldier's spirit is keenest in the morning, By noonday, it has begun to flag, and in the evening, his mind is bent only on returning to camp.
They want to go home.
They do. He understood that there's this natural ebb and flow in battle. Energy levels, morale, it goes up and down, and a smart general can use that to their advantage.
Time your attacks when the enemy's tired.
Exactly.
Know when to hold back, conserve your own strength.
And speaking of holding back, Sun Tzu also talks about the importance of, unfathomable plans.
Oh, yeah.
Being unpredictable.
Guessing.
Never letting your enemy know what you're really going to do.
So being elusive, striking from unexpected angles, always staying one step ahead.
He writes in Chapter 12, The 9 Situations, he says, keep your army continually on the move and devise unfathomable plans. He believed that predictability makes people complacent.
It's like playing poker, right? Never letting your opponent see your tell.
Exactly. And this element of surprise, it goes hand in hand with speed and decisiveness.
Hit them hard and fast.
He writes, rapidity is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unreadiness. Make your way by unexpected routes and attack unguarded spots.
Don't give them time to react.
Exactly. And this emphasis on speed is also a big part of his advice on sieges.
Sieges, those usually seem pretty slow. How does speed factor into that?
Well, Sun Tzu actually advised against those long, drawn-out sieges.
Okay.
He says they use up too many resources, demoralize the troops, give the enemy time to regroup. It's much better to find ways to capture cities quickly.
So even in a siege, it's about being swift and decisive.
Exactly.
But how do you capture a city without a long siege? That seems tough.
Sun Tzu suggests using things like deception, propaganda, maybe exploiting divisions within the enemy ranks, make them surrender without a fight.
What's about attacking their minds, their morale, before you ever go near their walls?
Exactly. It's like playing 4D chess, where you're not just moving pieces on a board, you're manipulating reality itself to get what you want.
Mind games. It's amazing how this ancient text can still offer such relevant insights into conflict. And it's not just about war, is it?
Not at all. Sun Tzu's principles, they apply to so many different situations.
Business deals,
Political campaigns.
even personal relationships.
It's about understanding the dynamics of power.
The art of persuasion.
Thinking strategically. It's about how to get what you want.
It's a good reminder that the battles we face in life, they're not always fought on a literal battlefield.
That's right.
Sometimes it's in our minds,
The boardroom.
the court of public opinion. And Sun Tzu gives us the tools to win those battles too.
He does.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today.
We have.
But there's one more piece of Sun Tzu's philosophy that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
The ethical dimension of warfare.
Ah, yes.
Sun Tzu wasn't just about winning at all costs.
Right.
He also knew how important moral principles are.
Absolutely. While Sun Tzu is famous for, his strategies and his focus on deception, he also knew that a true victory isn't just about beating your enemy.
There's more to it than that.
It's about doing it in a way that's morally right.
So it's not just about winning. It's about winning the right way.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that idea of the moral law from Chapter 1, the importance of having your people behind you, governing with justice and compassion.
Right. It all comes back to that.
Sun Tzu believed that a ruler who has the trust and respect of their people has a much stronger army, an army that's willing to fight and die for their cause.
Because it's the people who actually do the fighting, right?
Yeah.
Their willingness to sacrifice depends on believing in the cause.
That's right. And Sun Tzu emphasizes this throughout the book. He advises treating prisoners of war well. He argues that being cruel can backfire on you.
I see.
Treating prisoners with kindness, he thought it could lower the enemy's morale.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe encourage defections, boost your own army's morale.
So even in the heat of battle, there's room for compassion.
Absolutely. And I think that's such an important message, especially in today's world,
Yeah.
where we often think of conflict as, the zero-sum game.
One side wins, the other side loses.
Exactly. But Sun Tzu reminds us that there's another way.
A way to win without all that violence and cruelty.
To achieve your goals while minimizing the bloodshed and suffering.
It's about creating a more peaceful world.
That's it.
That's a perfect thought to end on. But before we go, I want to remind everyone that we've only just scratched the surface of the art of war.
There's so much more there.
There's so much wisdom in this ancient text.
I encourage everyone to read it themselves.
Yeah, delve a little deeper and see what you discover. We've talked about so many of Sun Tzu's ideas today.
We have.
Deception, espionage, the importance of picking the right battles.
Right.
Striking fast.
Being decisive.
But I think what makes Sun Tzu so special is He understood that war is about more than just, like, military moves.
Absolutely. He saw the bigger picture.
It's about psychology, logistics, leadership.
It's all connected.
He even brings in ethics.
He does. He was ahead of his time.
Sun Tzu was visionary.
Oh, yeah.
His insights into conflict are just as relevant now as they were thousands of years ago.
Amazing, isn't it?
He understood that winning isn't just about overpowering your enemy.
Right.
It's about outmaneuvering them, outsmarting them, almost like persuading them to see your side of things.
It's a more subtle approach.
It is. It's like that saying, the greatest victory is the one that requires no battle.
I love that.
Sun Tzu seemed to get that.
Yeah.
The best outcome is to achieve your goals without violence.
Exactly. That's where diplomacy comes in. Intelligence gathering.
Yeah.
Psychological warfare.
He knew that sometimes the best way to win a war is to stop it from happening in the first place.
Prevention is key.
It's like diffusing a bomb before it explodes.
Perfect analogy.
You're dealing with the root of the problem.
Not just reacting to the symptoms.
Exactly. And to do that, you need to really understand your opponent.
Know what makes them tick.
What are they afraid of? What are they hoping for?
Sun Tzu believed the more you know about your enemy, the better your chances of finding a peaceful solution.
So it's about empathy.
It is.
Putting yourself in their shoes.
Seeing things from their perspective.
Trying to find common ground.
And that's a skill that's useful everywhere, not just in war.
It is. In all aspects of life.
It's about building those connections.
Opening up communication.
Finding ways to work together even when you disagree.
And, I mean, a lot of times, conflict happens because of misunderstandings, miscommunication. If we can address those underlying issues.
Right.
We can often avoid those more destructive ways of dealing with conflict.
And that's where Sun Tzu's emphasis on moral leadership is so important.
Okay, yeah, talk about that.
A true leader, he believed, isn't just a strategist. They're a role model.
Someone people look up to.
Someone who inspires trust, loyalty, a shared sense of purpose.
So it's not just about giving orders.
Not at all.
It's about setting an example.
Being honest.
Acting with integrity.
Treating others with respect.
And that kind of leadership, that's powerful stuff. Not just on a battlefield.
It applies everywhere.
It's about inspiring people to be their best.
Yeah.
To work together. To create a better world.
That's the goal. And Sun Tzu's legacy shows just how powerful that kind of leadership can be.
It does.
His teachings, they've influenced people for centuries.
Military leaders.
Political leaders.
Business people.
All sorts of people. His wisdom, it goes beyond time and culture.
It does.
It gives us valuable insights into conflict and how to achieve success that lasts.
Well, I think we've come full circle in our deep dive today.
We have. It's been a great journey.
We started by wondering, did Sun Tzu even exist? And now we're talking about his lasting legacy.
It's amazing how relevant his teachings still are.
It is. It's a testament to how much human nature stays the same.
Even after all this time.
Even though the world has changed so much, we still face the same challenges of leadership, strategy, conflict.
We do. The tools might be different, but the principles are the same.
So the next time you're up against a challenge, whether it's personal, professional,
whatever it is,
even on a global scale,
right?
Remember Sun Tzu's wisdom.
Okay.
Be adaptable, be strategic, be informed, be decisive, and most importantly, be ethical.
Great advice.
Who knows? You might just find yourself winning in ways you never imagined.
It's possible.
Thanks for joining us today on this deep dive into the art of war.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new and that you'll keep exploring Sun Tzu's wisdom.
Yeah, keep digging deeper.
Because the art of war isn't just about winning battles. It's about achieving lasting peace and prosperity. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep strategizing.